presentation on what we're proposing as our lane use fee update. I'm Jennifer Lowry. I'm a principal engineer in our traffic and parking services division. With me is Scott Kramer, who leads the lane use group that issues the obstruction permits, and Carrie Schmidt is in that lane use group as well. Steve and John are my bosses, and Don also works in the division. So I'll run through this. Like I said, it should only be about 15 minutes. You can ask questions during or wait till the end. It's fine. So it's what are lane use fees? Where do they exist? Why are they changing and how will they change? Where will they apply and when will the change apply? Then we'll have some time for questions. You can type them in the chat too if you want. So what are lane use fees? We'll get to that. First, defining the public right-of-way is the area between the property lines, in this case, essentially buildings in downtown, essentially. It includes sidewalks and boulevards, bike lanes, parking lanes, and moving lanes. And the right-of-way itself, or streets within the right-of-way, consists of about 22% of the land area in the city. And so our management of that 22% of land is very important within the city. We regulate the use of that right of way through several permits, one of which is the obstruction permit issued by Public Works, Traffic and Parking Services, this division that we on this call are in. The permit allows the city to both protect public assets and also to preserve the space needed for the movement of people, goods, and services within the city. So the obstruction permits that the land use group issues, they issue about 15,000 of them annually. They are applied for and granted through Rowway, our online software and website. And the obstruction permit itself has no cost to it, but there are fees associated with some of the closures typically requested in obstruction permits, and those fees are the lane use fees. The current fees are noted in this table, broken down into the downtown zone or arterial routes outside of downtown. Additionally, there are other costs potentially associated with the obstruction permits that could be lost revenue due to meter hooding, and the obstruction permit is the mechanism for people to request meter hooding and posting for no parking. In addition to the obstruction permit, as far as the city regulating the right-of-way, there are other permits such as the excavation permits for work below ground, utility connections, and encroachment permits, but those are not part of the conversation today. And also the lost revenue for meter hooding is also not a part of this proposed change. Hello, Eric. So in about 2000, we began to charge for lane use fees for obstruction permits, and the reduction in the amount of space and the duration of use of the right-of-way was immediately apparent because there's a lot happening in our right-of-way and all of these things are constantly changing. Our right-of-way permits, our obstruction permits the goal is to know who is where and when. Such that we can both maintain the mobility within our network, whether you're walking or biking or taking the bus, or we have freight trying to get around the city, and emergency vehicles, or you're driving, in addition to maintaining our assets and our infrastructure. So, if someone is doing some excavation work or some utility work, there might be something that's undermined that would compromise our asset months later. And so keeping track of who's where when is very valuable. So why are they changing? Several of the challenges that prompted the city to change ordinances around 2000 and establish these permits and fees still exist today. So there are still notable impacts to the right-of-way and the traveling public that we believe construction methods could potentially mitigate. And we're still challenged with compliance and enforcement issues in addition to increased use and duration of the right-of-way. It's important to note that the fees that were established about 20 years ago have not increased or been updated since then, which results in this being one of the less expensive options relative to the value of the space. And unfortunately, in some cases, that means it gets abused. So our update to these fees seeks to minimize the impact to the right of way in general, but also to specifically minimize the impact to specific modes of travel, such as walking and biking, to better align with our city goals and priorities. So our modal priorities are shown here, which lists like pedestrians as the top, followed by bicyclists and transit users, and lower down is automobiles. So you can see the goal is to have a mode shift so that 3 of every 5 trips are taken by walking, biking, and transit in the future. Whereas if you look at what fees were charged for obstruction permits downtown in 2019, it makes sense that a lot of the impacts are to the parking lane, which aligns with our priorities of that space being lower on the modal priorities. But the next largest impact was seen on sidewalks, which does not align with this being our most important up here. So our goal with these fees, in addition to just updating with inflation, is to reduce the use and closure of sidewalks by at least half, if not more. So how are they changing? Like I mentioned, the inflation. So we're trying to accomplish these goals of the mode shift by both raising our pricing and then adjusting those fees relative to one another to align with our goals. So for example, the inflation, given a 2% inflation over 20 years, it equals about 45 to 50% increase. So therefore, we increase all of our fees, and then we adjust them relative to one another. So the adjusting relative to one another is currently we have kind of 2 tiers of fees, being that the moving lane is the highest and all the others are are on the same plane back here. So after we increase all these for inflation, then we also create a 3rd tier. We move the sidewalk fees up to that 3rd tier to make them most expensive. And then we also move the bike lane to at least be on par with the moving lane, which is used by transit. So you can see on that modal priority graph, we have our PEDs, our bikes in transit, and then vehicles. So where do they apply? This area is what we define as downtown, and that's not going to change. So the downtown rates are charged for the area bounded by 9435W, Mississippi River, and Plymouth Avenue. And then when we kind of adjust our rates to reflect our goals, that means the sidewalk is the highest, bike and moving lanes are medium, and parking lane is lower. Then we add on their arterial routes. And so these are essentially the state aid routes, the county aid routes, the trunk highways that exist outside of the downtown zone. So, and that just, kind of take a step down from what the rates are going to be in downtown, or what even they are today. Not lower than what they are today, but relative to downtown, our tier would still be less. So this update also adds a 3rd tier of where they are applied. So this would be all local routes. So essentially all roadways that we permit within the city outside of downtown and arterial would be applied to local. And this would be all roadways except for freeways, parkways, University of Minnesota roads, private streets, etc., things that we don't permit. Now you'll note kind of the highest and lowest, and then everything kind of else falls in between. So just to give an idea of what ultimately these cells will be populated with for dollar amounts, the high end today in our linear foot per day permitting is $1, and that could go up to $2. And our low end is currently 15 cents, and that could go up to 25 cents. So this could be $2, this could be 25 cents, and then everything else would kind of fall in between. So when do they change? We're saying effective January 1st of next year. This would be pending comments and feedback that we are receiving from these engagements and from the website. So we do need to take this proposed update to council for approval. Our actual dollar amount fees that we'd be proposing would be made public prior to the council acting on them. And then our approved fees will also be shared on the website and on our roadway website application. So between now and January 1st, we're going to work out some of the implementation details internally because, for example, charging fees on so many more streets in that local category does require a fair amount of logistics that we need to work out, but then also to give everyone advance notice so that projects can have their budgets made accordingly, considering new rates. So understanding that, you know, in trying to meet our goals, what ideally we'd like is people to just use the sidewalk less, not to use it the same and just pay more money for it. So I guess consider that in the budgeting. So questions and comments, what you can do. So this is our last virtual meeting. We held 2 yesterday. We also have the website that the link was provided in the email sent out, or you can go to minneapolismn.gov and search for lane use, and that'll get you there. At the bottom of that website, there is a link to provide comments and questions. Or you can provide them here as well. And you guys probably have pretty much everyone's email address from the lane use group. So if you prefer to provide them that way, that's okay as well. So what we'd especially like to hear from you or your peers is, what have you experienced that has worked well here or in other cities, and why? So be that, you know, has it worked well for you, or do you believe it's worked well for the other cities? We've been doing some peer city research ourselves, but it'd be interesting to hear from other people. And we'd also like your thoughts on other permitting or construction mechanisms that could help us reach our goals. So permitting, for example, if there were elements such as fee escalation based on the duration of impact, et cetera, like, are there other mechanisms in addition to raising costs to get us, you know, to 2021, that are ideas that we should consider, and what are your thoughts on those? And also any construction needs and methods. Not that you need to tell us all your business secrets, but we're just wondering if there's means and methods that we should be aware of or be supportive of, such that when we have contractors come and talk to us, we can talk through some of these options and understand those and what that means to them and what that could mean to impacts within the right of way. So you don't have to provide that today, but if you have anything that you'd be willing to provide soon, that would be very helpful. That is it for the presentation. I'll stop recording and we can have any conversation if anyone's interested in that.